Hey there, I am back with another deck review, and today we're going to be looking at Fraggle Rock from the Spare Room. So back on April 24th, 2013, the Spare Room in Hollywood hosted an event that was put on by the Henson Company to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Fraggle Rock. The famous children's show started back in 1983 and ran for nearly 100 episodes, introducing us all to the complex world of these Muppet creatures. The show really represented some of Jim Henson's proudest work. As part of that celebration, not only was there a party with Fraggle-inspired games and drinks, but a deck of playing cards was created and made available for the very first time. While this deck is, of course, a bit more difficult to get your hands on today, nearly a decade after its release, it is one of those decks that if you were a fan of Jim Henson and his work, is definitely worth the hunt in my opinion. But let's check the deck out and see this tribute to Fraggles everywhere. Starting with the tuck box, it's done on a matte dark green cardstock with beautiful accents of hot stamp gold foil. While the tuck box isn't embossed in any ways, that gold hot stamping process leaves a little semblance of texture that's a nice little addition to this one. You get the Jim Henson's Fraggle Rock, the logo up there at the top, of course a nod to the 30th anniversary, and then some fairly simple line work in these cream colors that culminate with the spade pip there in the middle with the Spare Room logo in gold. And then some nice little nods to the show. You'll see up at the top here the radish, that radish ever present in the show. It's the favorite food of Fraggles and makes an appearance in other parts of the show as well. And then some seemingly random words or quasi words around here. You'll see Wappa Wappa, Weeba Weeba, Garpox Gumbage Whoopee. Those are the words to the solemn Fraggle Oath. It's the oath they take when they're particularly serious about something they really want to commit yourselves. So something you'll see mentioned a few times in the show.
Weeba, weeba, wappa, wappa, garpox, gumbage, whoopee! Oh, wonderful!
All right, turning to the side here, you have Made in the USA, or Made under the USA, I should say. Reference, of course, to the fact that Fraggle Rock is underground, and I believe these are printed by the USPCC. And then Jim Henson's Fraggle Rock on the other side. A little bit of ad copy for the Spare Room there on the bottom. And then the top also just says the Spare Room, but it's covered up with the tuck seal here. The back has a foiled version of the back design of the cards, more on that in a second. And then the simple tuck seal here, once again, made under the USA for the Spare Room with that radish logo in the center. And as you open it up, you get a little excerpt from the opening credits to the show, closing with "Let the music play down at Fraggle Rock." And then nothing printed on the interior of the tuck box. So there's a fun little tuck box with a nice classic vibe to it, but some nice little touches to the show included as well. But let's get onto the cards, and we'll start with the back design. And here it is. So now instead of the gold foil, we're now using some kind of yellowish gold metallic inks on this one. And a fun little design, of course, centered around that famous radish with the accents of the bright gold. You get the small little Spare Room logos, and then some nice sort of orbital line work on here that gives kind of a trippy vibe to it overall. Nice little patterning around the edges, and then finishing out with a dark green poker border, kind of keeping the consistency of the color theme throughout this one. So fun look to it overall, good classic vibe to it, but at the same time giving some nice little nods to the theme. All right, now on to the cards. So get a pair of jokers, and these two jokers represent some of the more minor but interesting characters in the show. First one here, this is a depiction of Sprocket, who's the pet dog of Doc, who's the only human recurring character in the show. So Doc has this small workshop with a little hole that leads down into the Fraggle Roll, and Sprocket effectively sort of stands guard at the entrance, hassling Fraggles who journey through the hole. It's a bit of a weird depiction on this one, with Sprocket dressed up as a classic court jester, the dark greens on this one, but kind of a fun character addition, and you'll see those little hits of the gold metallics on there as well. Second Joker, this is a really weird one. This is the mysterious Marjorie the Trash Heap. So on the face of it, she's just a talking compost pile at the edge of the Gorg's farm. More on the Gorgs when we get into the court cards. But she also, for some reason, becomes an object of great reverence for the Fraggles, who often come to her for her sage wisdom and advice. And of course, poking out of the sides, you have her ever-present rat-like followers, Philo and Gunge. So another fun little hit to this one. Both of them have a kind of classic vibe. I love the little Joker banner up there at the top, and then the mention of the Spare Room at the bottom. So there's your two Jokers. You also get a pair of ad cards, and these are fun as well. So the first one over here features almost like an invitation to the 30th anniversary party, the picture of the punch bowl in gold there at the bottom. And then you flip it over on the other side, has a recipe for Wembley's wonderful whoopee water. So if you want to make a drink for yourself, it has two different versions. The Fraggle Rock version, of course, a little bit crazy, muddle some lemons and mint from the Gorg's garden, for example. But the bottom here, if you want to make it for yourself here in the human world, or in outer space, as the Fraggles would say, you can make the space room version, and it'll kind of tell you a more normal recipe for Wembley's wonderful whoopee water. Try saying that 5 times fast. So there's the one extra card, and then the other one is a bit of a spare room and Jim Henson extra card. So on one side you get the spare room, a little bit about them and their handcrafted cocktails, along with a map if you want to get there. You can still get there today. It's in the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, so it's one of the restaurants down there. And then on the other side, a nod to the Muppets themselves. So these are the 5 most famous Fraggles, sort of the main characters from the show. We'll see them make an appearance again in the court, so stay tuned for that. And then just a little bit of ad copy, as well as the Jim Henson Company mentioned down there. So there's your extra cards. And then we get into the aces. So Ace of Spades, definitely the power ace of the bunch, but very simple vibe to it, and definitely more of a spare room card than it is a Fraggle card. So the simple patterned spade pip there in the center has the spare room logo in bright gold metallics there in the middle. And at the bottom, quality playing cards by the spare room for Fraggle Rock. And then kind of a classic feeling pip and index there in the corner, more modern, almost like a typewriter font used there for the index, and then a pretty familiar spade pip there done in dark green instead of the classic black. The other 3 aces, fairly simple, not much customization to them at all. They do feature very small pips there in the center, and you'll see they're outlined with just a tiny, super thin line of gold metallic, just to give it a little bit of an extra accent. But Ace of Spades, definitely the power ace of the bunch. Number cards, all fairly simple. They use the very, very small pips, just like we saw in the ace. Some of them, whenever you see them kind of here in the middle, you'll see some of them are sort of outlined in gold, but most of them are not. But simple look to them, pretty classic layout, dark green for the black cards, and then red for the red cards. But nice, easily usable cards, but nothing too special in the customization front on these. I do like the smaller than normal pips. I think they give kind of a cleaner, more classic vibe to these overall. So there's your hearts. And then we come to the courts. And of course, in a world filled with interesting and unique characters, the courts have got to be fun. And these, to me, don't disappoint at all. So each one of these pay tribute to one of the races and some of the different characters that you'll encounter in the show. And starting out with the diamonds, we pay tribute to the Doozers. These are tiny, industrious creatures who inhabit the world in and around the Fraggles, and they dedicate nearly all of their time to creating this bizarre scaffolding and structures that really seemingly serve no purpose other than being built. And of course, they live in constant tension with the Fraggles since they build everything out of this sweet radish-based material, and Fraggles can't resist eating it any chance they get. So Fraggles are constantly destroying their creations, and then the Doozers are building them back up. And the courts in the deck are pretty classic layouts, 2-way courts. They feature the Doozers in some fairly familiar playing card poses, but I love all the small little details. You'll see them all with their tool belts strapped across their chest there, and they're even holding little implements, some of the tools that they may use on the job, the wrench or the plans there, the little pickaxe or hammer there on the King of Diamonds. And of course, you can see them wearing their classic helmets. Those helmets are a symbol of their lifelong commitment to hard work. So cool look to them, adorable little green creatures with those button noses. Really like those. All right, so next up, as we go to the clubs, these are an homage to the self-proclaimed rulers of the universe. These are the Gorgs. You may have heard me mention the Gorgs earlier. These are giant creatures that tower over the Fraggles, and they live in this rundown castle just outside of Fraggle Rock. The King of Clubs, this is Pa Gorg. He claims to have ruled for 742 years. But despite the fact that he's the ruler of the universe, these guys mostly serve as sort of farmers on the show. They tend a garden of radishes, and the Fraggles are constantly raiding their garden for food. The trio here consists of Ma and Pa Gorg, the queen and king, if you will, as well as their loyal son, Junior Gorg. Now, if I'm honest, these are the depictions that probably look the least like their show counterparts. Not a huge fan of how the Gorgs were depicted in this one, but still a fun little inclusion to expand on the universe of characters in the deck. And then we turn to the last two suits, the Hearts and the Spade, which are an honor to the Fraggles themselves, centering on some of the most notable characters from the show. And of course, the group of five different friends is front and center across these. Starting with their leader, this is Gobo. He's the leader of the five as the King of Hearts. The art on the Fraggles is some of my favorite in the deck. It really captures the bright and vibrant colors. And then Gobo even has his gourd guitar over there at his side. You'll see him playing that throughout the show in a lot of different times. So love the oranges, the pinks, just lots of bright colors really popping on these. Next up is Moki, who's the hippie dreamer of the group, preferring to spend her time writing poems, painting, or even just simply meditating. In this case, you'll see she's carrying a stalk of flowers, maybe a nod to the Queen of Spades, who's often depicted in a bicycle deck holding flowers. But in this case, I think it's a bit of a reference to her membership in the Clinging Creepers Emergency Flower Defense League. So one of her roles on the show. Next up, we come to Wembley, who's the youngest and the friendliest of the gang. Talented percussionist, you can see the maraca there in his hands, and always wore a banana tree shirt on the show. And so if you look real closely, you'll see those palm trees or those banana trees on his garb there in the center. And fun fact, he actually once took a job as the voice of the fire department's siren. Interesting little touch there. Boober is the next one and the smartest of the five. He actually makes his appearance here as the Jack of Hearts, and oddly, one of his favorite things to do was to wash socks, even though I don't think the Fraggles ever actually wore socks on the show. But you'll see on his clothes here, you'll see a little image of tiny socks there lining his outfit. And he's holding his trademark scarf off to one side. It's a brown scarf in the show, but the reds kind of look better with the card. And then last of the gang, this is Red, who's the group's athletic one. I love the poofs of red hair up here at the top and that wide mouth smile, just a really bright, fun card. Red's a really competitive one with all her friends, even sometimes wrestling with Gobo for control of the group. She kind of wants to be the leader. This one really represents probably my favorite drawn card of the deck. Just the colors on this one, super bright, super vibrant. I think this one really works out well. And then the final one, this is the King of Spades and the tie between the Fraggles, of the world of the Fraggles and that of the humans. This is Uncle Traveling Matt, who's Gobo's famous explorer uncle. Spends most of his time in the company of the human world. He refers to our land or their land or our land as outer space and calls the humans silly creatures. So they're the silly creatures of outer space. And he's always sending postcards back to his nephew and his friends talking about the adventures that he's had. So his nice little bushy beard there and that flowing white hair. Kind of a cool extra addition. And you can see the log of his travels there off to his side. And that is it. That is the Courts of the Deck. Very fun deck, fun little references throughout, and great character selection. As far as handling, made by the USPCC, so you're going to be familiar with these. You know, if you've grabbed a deck of bicycle cards, this is going to feel super similar. Very smooth handling overall. No complaints on that front. Anyway, that is the deck. So a fun deck and a really, for me, if you're a fan of Fraggle Rock, if you're a fan of Jim Henson, the Muppets, I think this one is a must-have, just a really fun little tribute deck to grab a hold of, even if it is a little bit of a more difficult hunt to track one of these down for yourself. But worth it, always fun to have a deck to chase after. So I hope you enjoyed this look at Fraggle Rock from the spare room. Deck I was very glad to find and glad to get a chance to share with you guys. That's it for now. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe for more deck reviews, more unboxings. Let me know what else you want to see, and I'll see you for the next one.